Hello and welcome to another episode of the Family Renewal Podcast. I am Israel Wayne, and today we are going to be taking a look at a Charlotte Mason inspired homeschooling magazine called Commonplace Quarterly. Our guest for this episode is Cara Williams. Cara, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, I want to talk to you about a number of things, including your family and your homeschool journey and your quarterly publication. But full disclosure here, before we start the podcast, this is actually the first time that I have ever had a guest on the Family Renewal podcast, besides my wife, that is actually a relative of mine. So this is kind of a special treat. And Cara and I have a unique connection in that her mother and my mother were sisters. And so we are first cousins, and you live in Tucson, Arizona. But tell us a little bit about your family, how many children you have, and then tell us about how you got started with your homeschool journey.
Sure. I have 5 kids and my husband, and we live in Tucson. We've been here almost 20 years, and we have a eighth grader this year, a seventh grader, a fifth grader, a second grader, and then a kindergartner, though we don't do kindergarten. So
Yeah.
we almost have all 5 rolling through school, and we have our first high schooler next year, which is exciting. And we've been homeschooling since the very beginning. My oldest did a 2-week stint in a Montessori, a local Montessori, and 2 weeks in, we homeschooled. So
Wow.
we've been doing Charlotte Mason from the very beginning. I found out about the methodology a couple years before we started schooling, so I was really excited to get going when my kids turned 6. So yeah.
Yeah, you and I, while we are relatives, we have always lived in very different parts of the country. And so we didn't grow up around each other. We didn't know
Mm-mm.
each other really all that well. And so my family started homeschooling back. My mom started homeschooling my older sister, Sony, and I back in the late 1970s. And we were homeschooled most of the way through our experience. We had 2 years, I think, when I was in second grade and sixth grade in private Christian school, but the rest of the time we were homeschooled. My wife actually was homeschooled out in Arizona. Her
Mm-hmm.
mom was one of the founding members of the Arizona Families for Home Education, the AFE group there in Arizona. So they started in 1983. And so my wife and I were both homeschooled. We homeschool. So, and then my day job, of course, has been working in homeschool publishing because my mom started a magazine called Homeschool Digest. And 30 years ago, I came on as marketing director for her magazine, worked there for 20 years. So I know a bit about magazine publishing myself. And a few years back, I found out about your magazine and had a chance to see some issues of it when we were in Arizona a while
Mm-hmm.
back. And it's interesting that you didn't ask me before you started publishing your magazine for my advice, which was really probably wise because I would have said, "Don't do it." After 20 years of being in magazine publishing, I'm kind of jaded, so I wouldn't have been the right person to talk to because I just would have been totally negative and cynical and totally discouraged from your vision. But tell me a little bit about what inspired you to start Commonplace Quarterly and just what some of your vision has been for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've always loved books. Charlotte Mason homeschooler, and I remember, I feel like you get to this place in homeschooling where you've learned enough and you've read enough that you have this vision and this ideal of where you want to go. And you sort of just begin to ask yourself, okay, this is where I'm at, and I know where I want to go, and I'm not there yet, especially as someone who did not grow up in the homeschool, who didn't grow up as a homeschooler.
Mhm.
And you start to think like, okay, how do I get from here to there? And I wish that there was a publication that would help me specifically with the Charlotte Mason aspects of things. And there just wasn't at the time. And so I remember just thinking, I wonder if we could do this. And I had these cousins who had produced a magazine. So I thought, this can be done.
That's right.
I've
And
seen
they're
this
not
done.
smart, so it must be possible.
It's uh that was actually my thought process is I had these my cousins did this. I know it can be done.
That's right.
So um and so well, and I had the photography background, and so Israel. Okay. Hi everybody who's watching. This is my daughter Violet. She would really like to say hi.
Riley,
All
welcome
right,
to
and
the
I'm
podcast.
going away. All right.
This is the beauty of this podcast is that we are a family-centric homeschooling
Yeah.
type podcast in doing real life in the real world. So
Yeah.
that
So
was great.
I apologize for that interruption.
No worries.
Um so I had a background enough in Adobe products that I thought, I think we can make this work. I think I figure out InDesign. I think we can figure out a publisher. And I made some calls to different folks in the Charlotte Mason homeschool world, and people were just on board. And it was really very much a snowball effect. There was, we are book people. And so book people look forward to receiving hard copy books in the
Mhm.
mail. And so there was a lot of positive just response to being able to produce something that people could read. And one of the things that I've loved from the beginning of producing the magazine is that it was a team effort. We have over 18 regular contributors
Wow.
plus main article writers. And so it's not just, the Cara Williams show or this one facet of Charlotte Mason show. It is merely it's very much bringing people together from different places and different parts of the world and different levels of experience to share what they're doing at home with other moms who are also, doing the same thing at home, but just in a print format. So it's
Sure.
been it's been really neat from the very beginning to see it come together.
So obviously you have different articles that come out in each issue, but there are probably some themes that people can expect or some things that are consistent from issue to issue. So like what are the main types of themes that you like to cover in Commonplace Quarterly?
So we like to talk about in the Charlotte Mason method about spreading the feast for our kids. And so what we when we first designed the magazine, we thought, okay, how could we spread a feast for moms? And so we really hit on a lot of the Charlotte Mason feast topics. We have an artist study in each magazine. We have encouragement for just your daily tasks for teaching your kids. We talk about music study. We have some poetry. We'll have Plutarch. We have and Shakespeare. That Plutarch and Shakespeare make regular appearances in the magazine.
Great that you're able to land them as regular columnists. That's just great. That they
That'd
had
be
the
great.
time to do it, is really accommodating of them.
So we actually have the magazine itself is divided into 4 sections, and I'm gonna, for those of you who are watching, I'm gonna hold this up here and then I'm gonna read about it for the audio folks. There's an educate section and an encourage section, an inspire section, and then a delight section. And we try to have a main article writer in each section that's new to the magazine every quarter. And then we have regular contributors. So like here we have our handicraft and our poetry, and those are regular columns. But the main article writer will be writing something fresh and new every quarter. And then over here, this is where in the educate section where we'll look at our artist study, and then we always have excerpts from the volumes because we should, if you're a Charlotte Mason educator, you should read the volumes, right? Just from the volumes. And so we just always pull out some excerpts that relate to what we're doing. And then in the encourage section, it's a lot of just mom to mom stuff in the encouragement section because we all need that.
Yeah, absolutely. So your magazine is really an interesting mix because it has an excellent aesthetic appeal to it,
Mhm.
which you come from a family that is very artistic. And so I know that that's something you were raised with is loving
It
art
was.
and beauty. And then it also, has that encouragement aspect, as you said. But your publication is predominantly print, which from my side of the family, my mom was sold on print. I remember
Yeah.
trying to at one point convince her that we had entered a new era and that there was a need for us to use technology. And my mom's view is she's very much a physical book person, and she wanted to hold something. And part of it for her, like with a magazine, was that there's an experience that you have with a print magazine. And so a lot of people have gotten away from print, but I think some people are going back to it, actually, that they've kind of gotten tired of just everything being screen time, and
Yeah.
they really love having a beautiful magazine on their coffee table or something that's a physical
Mhm.
presence. But you do have digital options as well. So tell people about, like, if they want to get copies of the magazine, either back issues or subscriptions, what some of their options are with that.
Yeah, so our website is commonplacequarterly.com, and there you can, if you go to the subscribe link, you can get the paper copy. The app, we have an app that is available on all of the app stores out there. And if you just type in Commonplace Quarterly into your app store, it'll pop up. The app itself is free. A subscription is $3.99 a month. And then
And that gives them
the
access to what? To just the latest issue, or?
to all the issues. So
Okay.
when you subscribe to the app, you are able to access all of our digital issues. And they all pop up in sort of this neat little bookshelf format, and you can click on them. And then the app can be accessed from your computer or your phone. And
Excellent.
so certain people, people who travel a lot, people who live overseas, really love having access to the app and the digital content. Um, and we love being able to give that to people who live far away and can't have physical copies of things. So,
Yes. Yeah, well, it's a great opportunity for you to take content that in some ways is timeless,
mhm,
that has a longevity to it. In publishing terms, we call it evergreen content because it's content that doesn't grow old. It's not dated. So you're not writing about current events. You're not talking about something that happened in the news this week. You have content that really somebody could pick up 20 years from now, and it's still going to be relevant. And for those who
yes.
don't know the technical aspects of publishing, these periodicals are published in more of a perfect bound format, so
Mhm,
they're not stapled together. These are publications that will last, so they really are
mhm,
kind of a long-term investment. It's a
mhm,
great kind of thing to have on a bookshelf, to have as a collectible set, so
yep.
that they're really something that you will keep for a long time, and maybe even to pass on to the next generation, because they're not a disposable monthly magazine format, if that makes sense.
Mhm,
So that's something that I think a lot of people will very much appreciate, is it's like a collectible set that builds over time.
mhm,
And the content is all, as I said, evergreen type content that people will be able to read and enjoy and appreciate
mhm.
for generations to come.
And
So when you have people who um, are looking for the some of the listeners who are saying, well, I'm not really very familiar with Charlotte Mason. I don't really know what that is. I don't know what that means. Heard of homeschooling, but I don't know that term or who that is, or what that is. Can you describe what, from your perspective, what's kind of unique about the Charlotte Mason method, and what appeals to you about it? And then, what's different about your magazine because of that?
sure, Charlotte Mason was an educator out of Britain, and she was not a mother, but she did start out as a governess, and then she worked with moms and teachers until she died. And so she established the House of Education in England, and she continued to promote and develop her educational philosophy over the course of her lifetime. And she produced a 6-volume set of books that contain her method in them. And each volume, there's a lot of information in the 6-volume set. But in her 6th volume, she boils it down to her basic principles. And so she has this set of principles that she has developed over the course of a lifetime that she believes are important in the education of a child. And so I think one of the things that sets the Charlotte Mason education apart is that it is more method and less system. And that is one of the things that helps allow it to be timeless, is that she has one of her main principles that most people have heard of is that children are born persons. So the value of the child as somebody who is born in the image of God and therefore has inherent worth is at the core of her methodology. And of course, that is something that you can value no matter where you come from, no matter what your background is or how much money you make, you can value your children as people. And she believed that children should spend a lot of time outside, and she believed that the mother should be able to step back and allow children to have freedom and space while still maintaining discipline and order in the home. And of course, there's more detailed things on this, but the core of a Charlotte Mason education is about valuing people for who God has made them to be, and then seeking God in the education that we give to our kids. And so there are, you do that by choosing books that are living instead of just checking boxes or quizzing. I don't know, what am I trying to say? Doing a lot of memorization just for the sake of memorization. Valuing the arts, the art itself. We do a lot of picture study, and then also the arts in terms of music, composer study. So you're essentially learning not just math and reading, but you're also learning to appreciate art and to appreciate music and to value the place that creativity and intellect have together in the world. So you value science, but not just by reading it in a book. You go out and you touch and you feel it, and you understand that God made the world, and you spend a lot of time out in that world that God made. And the process of developing the intellectual sort of aptitude to go from a young child who is touching and feeling and seeing and learning with their senses to an older child who is looking at a microscope and really getting into the underside of the visible world and reading books about the history of science and how things were developed. And so it's a very scaffolded and developed process. But at the end of the day, it comes down to people, the child being valued, and the relationship that child has with the Holy Spirit being valuable. So one of the things that happens, I think, as a mom, when you're beginning to learn about this method is there's so much freedom and so much beauty and also so much challenge in it. It's very different than a traditional school setting. You have to trust that your child is going to learn and grow. You have to trust that you're going to read these beautiful, what seem like difficult books to them at early ages, and that they're going to want to read them. And you have to trust that you're going to take your kids outside for hours and hours at a time when they're younger, and that's going to transition itself into a love of the natural world and a desire to learn about science. And I think anytime you're in a place where you're growing as a parent and you're having your ideas challenged, this isn't how I was educated, is this, we're gonna do this, right? Like with our kids, like, why do I believe that this is the right choice? I think it's always just beneficial to have people in your corner, good encouragement to continue learning more about what it is that you're teaching and why you're teaching it. And so that's what the magazine tries to do. Is we don't try to convince people that Charlotte Mason is the method choice that you should be doing, because I'm a Charlotte Mason homeschooler, but I think there's value in a lot of different methods of homeschooling. And so we come in to the magazine assuming that if you're reading the magazine, you're okay with Charlotte Mason as a homeschool method. And also that you're a believer. It's just a solidly Christian publication, and we don't try to explain that in there. It is what it is. And we think that's really important. That actually, I believe, is one of the things that sets Commonplace Quarterly aside from other publications, is that it's very biblically centered. We allow and encourage our writers to speak about their relationship with Jesus, about God in their homes, because I think it's really important, and it's the crux of a Charlotte Mason education is the relationship that we have with our Heavenly Father, and how that lives out in our own personal lives, and how that touches every piece of what we do, so we make sure that that's in the magazine. Sorry.
No. So
Lost my train of thought.
excellent explanation. And so I'm sure some mothers are listening to this, they're thinking, wow, that either describes me as a homeschool mom or homeschool family, or that describes what I think I would like to have as a homeschool family, and I want to get plugged into that. You mentioned that you have an app that someone could just search in an app store for Commonplace Quarterly. Your website again is?
commonplacequarterly.com.
So commonplacequarterly.com. And then if they want to connect with you on social media, how can they do that?
We are on Instagram, and if it's Commonplace Quarterly again on Instagram. We are on Facebook, but not hugely. We have a presence. We're not one of those groups that has like a really engaging forum on Facebook or anything, but we do have a page where we double post from Instagram to Facebook, and that's really all that we have in terms of social media. We try to keep it pretty quiet, just because we personally like it quiet on the CBQ team. So those are the places.
Social media can be a big babysitting project.
It really can. So we try to keep it simple. I feel you.
Yes. Well, again, thank you, Cara, for being willing to come on and talk about your journey and your publication. I hope that those families that this has resonated with, and that they, either identify this as, hey, that's describing our family, that's how we do homeschooling, or those who say, wow, that just sounds really refreshing, and I'm very interested in learning more. They'll visit commonplacequarterly.com, check out Commonplace Quarterly on Instagram, and also in your app store. And just any final parting words for the listeners?
I guess just thanks for taking the time to listen. We love producing the magazine. We'd love to hear from you if you're interested. I guess I could say we have an email. It's info@commonplacequarterly.com. If you have any questions about the magazine, if you're looking through it, or Charlotte Mason education in general, if you're new to the world of Charlotte Mason, we'd love to hear from you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And we'll look forward to maybe having you on again in the future. But until next time, thank you for listening to the Family Renewal Podcast.
Thanks, Israel.